tornado hit Paducah. Paducah's not that far from here. Around here, tornadoes happen quite a bit. So we're going to talk about disaster preparedness and some other things that could happen. We're not going to talk about forest fires too much because, as you can see, we have enough rain that everything's pretty much wet and nothing's going to burn down anytime soon. So let's talk about general emergency preparedness for natural disasters. So several natural disasters that we have in this area specifically: earthquakes, floods, and wind, tornado type stuff. Okay? So when we're talking about disaster preparedness, we want to make sure that we have a preparedness bucket or preparedness cabinet or preparedness something with stuff in it, so if things do go bad, we have emergency victuals and water and stuff. So some things that you want to make sure is in there is you want to make sure that you have water, because you can only go about 72 hours without water. I talked to, I forgot her name.
Connie?
Connie, thank you. I talked to Connie, and she said that the government has told us that if the bridges go out in case of an earthquake, it's going to be 3 days before everything is restored, before you guys get food and water back.
How long does that water last though? So it's supposed to be in the sun either.
Well, okay, so if it's a bottled water like you get from the store, that can last indefinitely. You can have that in a bottle for 10, 20, 30, 40 years and it'll be okay. It's better if you keep it cool in a dry place, but as long as the cap's on, it's good.
How about juice? Like,
Juices are a different story. I would stick with water because juices can grow bacteria and after a while they can spoil and they can go bad, whereas water doesn't go bad if it's in a tight bottle.
If you put water like out of the faucet in the refrigerator, are you okay if it stays in there a while?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Most of the time, the water around here, well water or city water, has enough chemicals or is purified enough that it's not going to be a problem. You can have it for weeks, months even. Some of the bottled water that you have is spring water. And that's basically what it is. It's water from outside that they put in a bottle and lasts years. So get some water. You want to have about a half a gallon a day. So that's roughly, so 4 bottles is about what you want every day as a minimum. So if it's one person in the household, you go 4 times 3 days, and that's 12 bottles of water that you want at a minimum. Okay? Food is a good idea, but you want to make sure that the food is food that's not going to spoil. Okay? Now, a lot of food spoils. Like if you get put in lettuce inside your preparedness kit, it's probably going to spoil. If you put fruits and vegetables, they probably ain't going to last more than a week.
Peanut butter lasts the most.
Peanut butter and nuts. Nuts are the most, the longest lasting food that you can have in a preparedness bucket. And the reason why is because they're full of nutrients. They have a lot of calories. They're fairly small. They last forever. And even if you have diabetes, you can have nuts. Okay? Whereas a lot of other foods may not be able to be. MREs are not a bad choice. Dehydrated food is not a bad choice. But those things can get expensive. So picking up a bag of almonds and peanuts, or picking up a container of mixed nuts, that's a very good idea because they keep very long because of the salt content. Okay?
How long does peanut butter keep?
Peanut butter can keep for 10, 15 years. Wow. You what, man?
Even after it's expired?
yeah.
Yeah, like we talked about yesterday.
I thought I threw it away because,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
they said I didn't see it.
So like we talked about the other day about things getting expired, right? The company that's making the food, they're only watching that for a couple years and they're like, yeah, it's good after a couple years, and they put an expiration date. They're not going to watch it for 50 years to see if it's going to go bad or not. And so they can't guarantee you it's not going to last that long. But as long as it doesn't have mold or it doesn't smell bad or doesn't have stuff growing on it or doesn't have worms inside of it, it'll keep for a long period of time. So nuts and water, yes sir.
How long does dehydrated food,
About 25 years, 20 to 25 years.
like dehydrated peppers and dehydrated squash? I have a dryer.
If you package them properly, they can last 25 years. The industrial stuff that you can buy at the store that's dehydrated, that can definitely last 25 years because of the regulations that are put on it. But if you do it yourself, at least several years, if you package it properly, and then possibly more. So as long as you keep it dry and sealed, it's good.
Well, I put it in just sealed up in bags, in freezer bags, and put it in my pantry.
And it can keep a couple years like that. As long as it starts to get wet, it starts to get moldy, then that's when it starts to go bad. Yeah. So as long as it's dehydrated, it stays dry, it'll keep for a very, very long time. So dehydrated food, MREs, those are all good ideas. Like I said, nuts tend to be cheaper and easier to put in a preparedness container. Another thing you want is at least 3 days of medication in there. So if you take nitro tabs, if you take sleeping meds, whatever you take, try to get at least 3 days worth inside a baggie and put it inside your preparedness kit. Okay? See what else?
Survival kit.
Wait, say, man?
Yeah, survival kit.
Like
Yeah.
first aid?
Yeah. So this is yeah. So let's talk about first aid. Adding it to our big bucket of stuff. First aid kit. We want stuff to stop bleeding. We want stuff to take care of minor breaks and scrapes. Most of the time, even if you are cut off from the outside world for 3 days, if there's an emergency, they can get some type of resource to you. So having things like bandages, gauze, those are all good things to have in a first aid kit. Antibiotic ointment, a little bit of burn cream. If there's a small burn, if there's a big burn, it's not really good for you. Some peroxide if you got cuts and scrapes, stuff like that is good to put in your first aid kit. Most of the industrial first aid kits that you can buy at like Dollar General, those have enough stuff in it for what you'll need. Okay. Let's see. List of medical problems. So in your emergency bucket, write down a list of all your medical problems and put it in a plastic bag and stick it in there. That way, if you pass out, an ambulance or the National Guard shows up at your door, and they can look at that paper and they go, oh, he's got this problem or that problem. I'm going to go ahead and we can take care of you better. Okay? Sometimes if you're diabetic or something, and you're low on sugar, if you don't put that in there, it's going to take me several minutes to figure out what's wrong with you, and that could cost some time that you don't have.
And also if you're allergic to something, right?
Yes.
Some kind
So
of medicine.
that goes along with your medications, right? So your medications, your medical history, your allergies, those three things we want to put together.
And the medicines need to be in the bottles or they won't know what they are.
Yes.
Or you need a list.
Or you need a list. So if you're going to put your medications in there, like Judy, she has 10 different medications, 30 different medications, or whatever. Each medicine she'll put in a bag and she'll write the name down on it. What it is, how strong it is, when she's supposed to take it. Because sometimes putting an entire pill bottle is just too bulky, right? So make sure you write all that stuff down. An emergency radio. Having an emergency radio is nice because when you have an emergency radio, you can hear about weather warnings, about emergency data that's coming through, the possibility of being rescued soon, things that you might need to prepare for, like you might not be able to drink the water in the town for a week or so, and it'll tell you that on the emergency radio. These emergency radios, there's two types that I like. There's one that's a hand crank. You crank it up for a little bit, and it can last several hours. There's another one that's sun-powered. You stick it out in the sun for a little bit, and it'll run for hours.
Where do you get them?
Usually at Walmart, and they're fairly cheap, around $10. So those are always a good thing. Flashlights, another good thing. When earthquakes or tornadoes or floods happen, power goes out. And so if you're trying to find yourself in the middle of the dark, you want to make sure that you have flashlights. Now, you want to put a flashlight inside your bucket, inside your container, but you also want to put a flashlight near your bed, one in the kitchen, one in the living room, so no matter where you're at when the power goes out, you can find a flashlight easily. You don't have to run to the other side of the house to get the flashlight. Okay? Do you have a question?
No, but I have a comment.
Yes.
I was given a small thing to put in the window
Uh-huh.
to show where I sleep.
Yes. Yep. And that can help
For
EMS.
ambulance people.
Absolutely. that can help EMS providers. So if you have something in the front window can tell you how many people are in the house, and then something in your bedroom window to tell EMS where you sleep. Because sometimes there's blockage at the front door, and so instead of the fire department or National Guard trying to break down all that stuff, they can just go directly to your bedroom window and get in that way and take care of you. So that's another very good idea. Thank you for that. When it comes to the container itself, you want something preferably that's waterproof. The problem with waterproof is that when you after you put the lid on, it's easy to put the lid on because you just sit on top of it, it squishes down, and it's sealed, right? Getting it off, even for me, can be very, very difficult. Now you have arthritis, you're not as strong in your hands as you once was. Trying to get that lid off can be very difficult. So what we like to do is we get a 5-gallon bucket, put everything in we're supposed to put in, put it on the, I like to put mine on the dryer, because if I put it on the dryer, if it floods, it's not going to get wet. So put it on the dryer, put a sheet over the top of it, and I put a rubber band, and then I flip it over. That way, it's strong. If something lands on it, it's not going to squish everything inside of it. And it's also protected from everything else. It's high enough out of the water so it's not going to flood and get stuff ruined. Okay? So, and it's easy to get undone. You just tip it over and open it up. It's really easy. Okay? There are some commercial containers out there that can run you 20, 30, $100. I wouldn't recommend them unless you really, really just want to spend the money. Most people I know don't want to spend that much money on stuff. So that's in general preparedness. When it comes to floods are fairly difficult to predict. Sometimes there's a lot of rain that comes in. Sometimes there's a big storm that's supposed to come in. You're all prepared, and you only get a little bit of rain. Sometimes a small storm is supposed to come in, and you get a lot of rain. And so sometimes they're difficult to predict, right? So what we want to remember is that we want to be in a place that's high and out of the water. We want to make sure that we're not touching anything in electricity. So if you got a house that, you got a toaster that's on in the water, that can electrocute you, or a microwave, or a air conditioner, right? That can electrocute you. So you want to get out of that. So staying on like a bed, that is a very safe place for you to be, so that way you don't get electrocuted from the electrical stuff that's in the water. It's out of the way. Another thing to do is make sure that you have some type of signal to tell emergency personnel where you're at. Most of the time, unless you're extremely young and you can climb on top of roofs, I don't even think I can climb on my roof. Most people aren't going to be able to get on top of the roof. So stay in your house, stay somewhere that's high, and put something out your window to let the EMS providers and the fire department and the National Guard know where you're at so they can come rescue you.
What would be an example that you could put outside so that they know somebody's there?
Something bright colored, a bright colored scarf, a bright colored sweatshirt, a pink shirt, anything like that. Something that is going to be very visible from the sky or from a distance. Okay?
In Louisiana, when they had those floodings, they hung bed sheets out the window.
Bed sheets. Big white sheets. I mean, those are fairly easy to see from a long distance.
They were spray painting help on some of the bed sheets.
Yep. Anything like that tells us where you're at. It helps us come find you much easier. So that's the basics about flood. Stay out of the water, stay in a high place, and make sure that you're visible so that EMS or National Guard can come find you. When it comes to tornadoes, so there's a difference between tornado watch and a tornado warning. A tornado watch is there might be a tornado. A tornado warning is there is a tornado, right? And we know the difference. Tornado sirens go off. We want to get into the lowest place. So if you have a 2-story house, you want to go to the first floor. Or if you have a basement, go to the basement. If you have a cellar, go to the cellar. But if you only have a first floor house, what you want to do is try to find the middle spot of the house where it has multiple walls between you and the outside.
All right, what about a mobile home?
So in a mobile home, sometimes that's a closet. So like a pantry closet or an internal closet, or ours at our house in Kentucky is a not a water closet, it's a powder room. It's like a half bath. It's a toilet and a sink, and that's our internal place. And we go in there and we take 2 dogs and a cat and both of us, and we cram in there and hunker down for an hour.
Blankets, pillows.
Blankets, pillows. So got to make sure that bathroom is clean if you're going to do that.
Exactly.
Okay, it's a good idea.
They put a mattress over the tub if you get in the tub.
So if you're going to do a tub, if you have an old style tub that's made out of metal, you can knock on it. It sounds like plastic. Don't even worry about it. It's garbage. If you have a metal style tub, you knock on it. It's nice and hard. Then throwing a mattress on top of you and getting in the tub, that's a fantastic place to do because it's made out of iron, it's very, very strong. Things are gonna fall on you and it's not gonna go in and you're gonna be safe, okay? So another thing that you can do is make sure you have, if that tornado warning does go off, take your bucket off the dryer, wherever you put it, and bring it with you to that room. So you have, in case everything collapses in around you, you have food and water and a radio and light and everything else you need, okay?
They have a, I don't know what you wanna call it, but people around here, because I lived up north, but I stayed here in the summertime with my grandparents. And 64 years ago, they say if a tornado, the river avoids this town, it's like protected.
Yeah.
But Dad, I'm gonna tell you, when I was 6 years old, 64 years ago, I saw the tornado come across the river. And it circled by my grandmother's house on Highway 79. It picked up a house and set it in a cornfield. And then it went on down through the next town south of us, Pagoda, and to Dyersburg. It killed 22 people.
Yes,
So
sir.
those people say that it can't cross that river and hit this town. They don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, absolutely. I lived in Indiana for a while, and tornadoes crossed the Ohio River several times in one day. One tornado crossed the Ohio River like 3 times. So just because there's a river, just because someone says it can't happen here, it can. Even if you live on a mountain, you can still get flooded. Okay? So you got to be prepared for everything. Now, some things like, we're going to talk more about floods and more about tornadoes, and because it's more likely what's going to happen in the area. We're not going to talk much about wildfires, right? Because we don't get wildfires around here. If something gets on fire, it's usually going to rain within the next day and then put it out.
Except for his store.
Except for his story, yes. So tornadoes, get in a safe place, internal, make sure you take that bucket of stuff with you, okay? Let's see, let's talk about regular disaster, earthquakes. That's another thing I want to talk about. So, safest place to be in an earthquake, again, internal room, under doorposts, inside bathtubs, you can get to those places fairly quickly. A lot of times, you're not going to have the time to grab your bucket of special stuff and take it with you. It's more important that you get to a safe spot. And after you get to a safe spot and the earthquake is done, then you can go grab your bucket of gear.
I'll tell you about earthquake, a little short story. When I was about 12, my grandmother, 5 o'clock in the morning, was in the bathroom, and the earthquake shook the entire house. My uncle was the newsreel man that went around with the cameras, and he asked me what she was doing. I said, well, she was in the bathroom, and he said, did everything come out okay? That's a true story. And my grandmother got so mad at me for saying that on the air.
Oh, thank you.
That's a true story. Everything came out okay.
Yes, it did.
I'll just throw it away while.
One of
We used to get when I was little, I didn't know about them, what they were, because the ground stuff would shake. And I asked Mama, she says, I don't know what it is, you know.
And around here, we don't get that big earthquakes.
Yeah.
Earthquakes are fairly small around here compared to where I lived in California. We get huge earthquakes out there. And so, but nonetheless, because you do live on a fault line, what you want to make sure happens is that you go into, earthquake starts, you want to go into a place where the walls are close to each other, or where there's doorposts. That's the strongest part of a house. When the big San Francisco earthquake hit 60, 70 years ago, or maybe even longer than that now, the only thing that was left standing in the houses was the doorposts. So get into those places where it's nice and close together, and it has a better chance of you surviving that earthquake, okay? After that earthquake is done, it doesn't mean you're out of the woods. What happens after a big earthquake?
Aftershocks.
Aftershocks, yes, aftershocks. And aftershocks can be as big and sometimes bigger than the original earthquake itself. So, yes, sir.
The big fault line here, pneumatic, has side cracks.
Yes.
And one of them goes right through my place. right about 100 yards out behind my house, and they actually put one of those monitoring thingies from the University of Memphis
Yeah.
down on my property, down near my garden, just sitting there and records stuff and sends information back to them.
Yeah.
They come out once a year and check it and send me a Christmas card or
Yeah.
like.
Where should we stay, like, once the earthquakes happened? Do we need to stay right there where we are for the aftershocks?
Stay inside.
They say don't go outside.
Yeah, don't go outside. Unless you're in a big field, just stay inside. The building will protect you better than being outside. If you're outside, ground can open up, things can fall on you, so stay inside and somewhere that's protected, okay? And stay in there until you're given the all clear. The thing about earthquakes, you're never really told when they're gonna happen. They'll tell you, okay, it might happen in the next 5 years. But 5 years isn't really a good time to prepare. At least with a tornado, you have 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5 minutes to prepare for it. With earthquakes, they just happen, right? So, you what, man?
Yeah, we're on the new measure.
Yeah,
We get them all the time.
exactly. And then that's what we're talking about, because it can happen in a flash, okay?
Yeah, one day I was sitting in the kitchen, when last major one we had here, it rattled the entire house. It was strong enough to shoot, rattle all the kitchen, all the dishes and stuff
Oh, yeah?
in our kitchen.
Yep. And that can happen. So that's why you want to stay in those closed places that have a lot of support. Last thing I wanted to talk about is about fires. Okay, fires. We don't have to worry about forest fires, but worry about house fires. When you're in your house, make sure you get a fire detector that detects smoke and carbon monoxide. Okay, carbon monoxide is a very deadly gas. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. There's no color to it. So make sure that you get a carbon monoxide and a smoke detector. Okay? At night, when that smoke detector goes off, get as low as possible. What happens in a fire is stuff gets burned and the smoke rises. This smoke up here is so deadly that one breath of that can kill you. So get as low as possible, go to the nearest door. Now, when you're sleeping, make sure your doors are closed at night. Fire needs 3 things to survive. Fire needs oxygen, heat, and fuel. Well, if there's already a fire in the house, there's heat, and there's plenty of wood because your house is made out of wood. But if you close the door, that's less oxygen that's feeding the fire. So the fire can't grow as quickly. Okay? So keep that door closed when you're sleeping in case a fire does break out. So fire breaks out, you get low, go to the door, and before you open the door, touch the door handle. If there's a fire on the other side of the door, you may not know it because you can't see it. You can just smell smoke, right? You touch that door handle. If it's warm, you have to find another way out. And this is very important that you don't live in a room without a window. Most new houses, actually every new house, to be considered a bedroom, you have to have a window. Because if that door is blocked because of fire, you want to be able to get out of a window. Okay? So be prepared to jump out of a window if you need to. If you're not strong and you're short and the window's higher, make sure you have something against that window so that you can jump out. Okay? And then, again, make sure that you don't go out that door if it's warm. And that's about it. Any other questions about?
What about putting like a towel or a sheet right where the door is to try to keep it from coming in? Would that be helpful?
So if you can't get out of your room, let's say your window's too high and you try jumping out and it's not possible. Putting a towel around the door, that's not a bad idea, but the first thing you want to do is try to get out. That's the first big
Like she
thing.
said about that carbon monoxide, oh my goodness, I was taking care of my dad up north, well, he was dying of cancer, I went up there to take care of him. He was already in the hospital, and I kept hearing something during the night, like, here I'm looking around, you know, and I couldn't find nothing. And I kept getting so tired and everything, that really, really makes you tired.
Yes, it does.
And anyways, I called my sister and she told me, she says, Candy, get out of there right now, call the fire department. Well, they came and they were the same men that took my dad to the hospital. And I didn't wanna go to the hospital, I see. And they told me, cause I was worried about my dad.
Yeah.
And I told them, you know, I would go to the emergency room once I got there. And I went and they said I was really lucky that I got there when I did. And they took some kind of test. That was the worst thing I've ever had
Yes, ma'am.
done. And they said, like I said, they said I was lucky that I made it because I was on the verge of dying.
And that's why you want a carbon monoxide detector.
I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
Maybe I didn't understand, I don't hear good. Are you saying when we go in our bedroom, just me and my wife?
Yes.
We live in a house that's got a hall, runs 70-something feet down through it. When we go in our bedroom, you saying shut the door
Yes, sir.
at night?
Yes, sir.
Never heard of it.
Yes.
We always do.
Shut the door.
We've got all kind of fire alarms, we've got all kind of carbon monoxide things,
Yep.
but I never heard of that.
Yep.
Now, I've got a window right there, I can kick out and be on the porch in about yay nanosecond.
Yeah. Well, the thing is that sometimes we don't wake up in time. Sometimes the fire is spread so fast that by the time we get out of bed and figure out what's going on, it's already spread into our bedroom.
Well, we got flashlights and everything right there handy, like you said.
Absolutely.
But I've never heard of that because
They do that in the nursing homes.
Yeah. The hospitals, nursing homes, big businesses, they have doors that will actually close.
yeah, I've heard of that, but I've never heard of it where you live in your own home, shut your door.
Yep, it's much safer that way. Gives you extra time to be able to get out of the house and not get injured. It keeps that smoke from coming into your room. I would strongly recommend it. There was a fire up in New York, and there was a picture, and I don't have the picture with me, but there was a fire on the outside of this little girl's room, and the fire department was able to come put out the fire before it got into her room. But the only reason that she survived, that 8-year-old girl survived, was because the door was closed. So that door can save your life, and that's why fire departments all over the country will recommend that you keep your doors closed while you sleep. Any other questions? What means, Connie?
This is wonderful. I also would, thank you so much, Todd, so much. Also, his wife is a phlebotomist, and she's got 2 pointers that I know of that she wants to tell you to do